day, everyone. I'm so very excited to welcome you to another episode of the Yaba Voice webinar. And really, this is not just another webinar. This is the first of its kind in the year 2024. I can say Happy New Year to you. We're excited to have you join us on this first episode for the year 2024. How have you been? We really missed you, but we are glad that we can have you join us on today's episode. So, good day from wherever it is that you're joining us from. We are glad that you're here and you're still joining us to listen to this and be more impacted. And I can assure you that we are ready more than ever before to impact you with the best of knowledge when it comes to mental health issues. The medical director is here to formally welcome us to the platform. Over to you, Dr. Lubenga Adekile Owoye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kemi Akitoyese. Thank you for the good job, and you are welcome to the year 2024. Good afternoon, everyone. I warmly welcome you to this month's edition of our webinar by Yaba Voice. As you all know, Yaba Voice is a platform for mental health education, advocacy, and community outreach. It is a social media platform of Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, Lagos, through which the hospital creates awareness and educate the populace on topical mental health issues. Today's topic is adaptive skills for emotional well-being. Adaptive skills for emotional well-being. If you look at the topic closely, you will agree with me that there is need for you and me to really work together to impact our mental health positively in this new year, because it's very, very important that we take our mental health very serious in particular year. To start with, I want you to note that when you talk about adaptive skill for emotional well-being, you will agree with me that our emotional well-being is how well people are able to process their emotion and cope with life challenges. And if you look at the social situation or the economic situation in the country, you will agree with me that there are a lot of challenges in the system. Hence, the need for us to have basic knowledge on the various adaptive skills that we can use to manage ourselves during this difficult time. So, managing stress, fostering positive social connection, and taking care of physical and mental health may help individuals maintain good emotional well-being. We all need adaptive skills to be able to achieve this. Why do we need this emotional well-being at this time? Number one out of every 4 people has one mental health issue or the other. And it's only about 75% of these people that have access to quality mental health services. So you can see how important are preventive measures against mental health challenges. In today's webinar, there are many questions to be addressed. For example, what do we understand by emotional well-being? How important is our emotional well-being? What are the factors that can compromise our emotional well-being? How do we maintain a very sound emotional well-being in the face of challenges? To address these issues are great mental health experts on this platform today. Our first speaker is Dr. Modupeola Motojesi. She is a consultant psychiatrist with greater than a decade of active experience in the management of mental health issues in both the public and private sectors. She's passionate about emergency psychiatry, mental health issues involving women, and mental well-being of the communities. She effectively leads teams of mental health professionals, frequently volunteer her time to speak to people on mental health, and is interested, if you will agree with me, is very, very interested in the well-being of the society. And not that alone, he's a great researcher. Modupeola is a fellow of the West African College of Physicians and a member of the Royal College of Psychiatry. She also has a master's degree in managerial psychology from the University of Lagos and certification from other international organizations. She's a member of the Nigerian Medical Association, Association of Psychiatrists in Nigeria, and a host of others. She is the currently head of emergency and new assessment unit of the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Yaba, Lagos, Nigeria. Our second speaker today is Dr. Charles Ume. Dr. Ume is a senior lecturer in the Department of Psychiatry, College of Medicine, University of Lagos, and is a consultant clinical psychologist, Lagos University Teaching Hospital, LUT, is there about Lagos. He specializes in clinical assessment and psychological intervention across lifespan. He had his undergraduate degree in psychology and graduated from the University of Lagos in 1994, top of his class. He also has master's degree in clinical psychology from the University of Ibadan and a doctor of philosophy in clinical psychology from the University of Lagos. Over the years, he has worked as a clinical psychology practitioner before picking up a lecturing position at the Department of Psychiatry, College of Medicine, University of Lagos. He is a member of several professional bodies, including Association of Psychological Sciences, International Society for the Study of Behavioral Sciences, that had awarded traveling grants to Canada, China, Lithuania, and other countries. He's also a member of Nigerian Psychological Association and Nigerian Association of Clinical Psychologists, for which he is currently the Lagos State Chapter Chairman. He is the operational lead of the Psychosocial Support Unit of the Lagos State COVID-19 Response Team. He also served in the Lagos State Ebola Virus Emergency Response Team. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to kindly relax and listen to our mental health experts as we promise you a rewarding session of today's webinar. Over to you, Dr. Kemi Akitoyesi.
Thank you so very much, the medical director, for that rousing welcome. And thank you once again also for kickstarting the conversation with us. And one of the things that I heard the medical director say is that 1 out of 4 people usually have mental health issues. And that's very, very important because, one, with the economic situation and there's so many realities that we have to confront now, I wonder if the number hasn't even increased. Now, to make it worse, a few percentage of those people also have access to mental health care. This is also very disturbing. And that's why we need to also talk about this. Now, in the face of the realities and every other thing that we have to confront, we need to add mental health problems to our challenges. That's why we're talking about this today. And the speakers have been introduced. Dr. Motojesi would kickstart this conversation with us this afternoon. And she's going to be talking to us on what is emotional well-being and why is it important? Why do we need to talk about it among all the things that we need to talk about in these current realities? Why do we talk about emotional well-being? Over to you, Dr. Motojesi.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Let us give honor to whom honor is due. Thank you, Dr. Weye. Thank you to the team of the Yaba Voice for the opportunity to talk on this topic today. And I want to wish you formally a happy new year, though it's the month of February, the end of February, but the year is still very new. All right, so this morning we're talking about emotional well-being and the adaptive skills we need. Okay, it's quite an interesting topic and a very relevant topic in these times. Before I define emotional well-being, I would like us to look at what emotions are. What are emotions? Because these are terms that we loosely use and we sometimes just think that I'm an emotional being. We hear things like I'm an emotional being, I'm this and that. Well, everyone is an emotional being. Let us look at what emotions are. Emotions are internal physiological states that are generated in response to internal or external events. They are largely subconscious, meaning that you see you have an event on the external and your brain and the network or the neural network just going to full drive to impress upon you how to feel, what to feel at that point in time. So what are the variants of emotions? We have 7 major large descriptions of emotions that we can feel, that we can feel within ourselves. Joy, they are joy, surprise, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, contempt, more like hatred. There are things that you can identify with on the inside of you and be able to express as a feeling. So now, having looked at what emotions are, I would like to say that every individual has emotions, okay, except there is a biological reason for the lack of emotions, because when we have certain events, like when we have a stroke, it could affect the neural pathways of expressions of emotion. But right from birth, from babyhood to old age, we all have ability to express emotions, to feel emotions. Okay, so now it brings us to the topic: what is emotional well-being? We have looked at what emotions are. So we would like to look at emotional well-being. A very brief definition of emotional well-being is that it is a positive balance of pleasant to unpleasant expressions and how to adapt when confronted with adverse and stressful life conditions. Okay, if we look at the list of emotions I highlighted earlier, we can see that we have the good emotions, the bad emotions. All right, that is in quotes to describe them. But these are the things that we can feel. But at every point in time that we have expressions of these emotions on the inside of us, how do we have a balance? Okay, how do we express those emotions? What is the outcome of the emotions that we feel on the inside of us? How do we express them? This is where emotional well-being comes in, how it is a balance, how you are able to have a balance of expression, and how you are able to respond to adverse situations, even joyful situations when they present to us. Why is emotional well-being important? Emotional well-being is important because it allows us to focus on the positive and manage negative emotions and feelings we may have in every given situation. So whether it is an internal event or an external event, we need to be able to express them adequately. It would be very important. It would be very repulsive to people around you if you have probably a moment of feeling hatred towards an event on the outside and just go berserk and just start cutting people's head. That will be like a sign of emotional unwellness. Okay, so emotional well-being is a balance, and it's so helping us to focus on this balance, helping us to focus on the balance of the feelings and the expression is one of the reasons why it is important. I would like to conclude this short question that I have been asked with linking emotional well-being with our mental health, using the mental health definition. What is mental health? This is a definition that we have used over and over again on this program. And this is just a reminder. Our mental health is a balance of our mood, our thoughts, our feelings and behavior that leads to good interpersonal relationships, productivity, and good community living. So we can see that our emotional well-being is like an indicator of our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Moto Jesse, for that definition and opening. You know, when she was talking, one of the things that came to mind was during the Naira saga. I don't know how many people remember that scenario where a man went to the bank and then they said there was no money and he removed all his clothes and it was just up all over the place. And, you know, she was talking about balancing pleasant and unpleasant. And then you must learn how to create a balance. So if you're not able to create a balance, then unwell is, you know, you're tending towards that dimension. All right, Dr. Charles Umel will be talking to us about some of the factors that can affect our emotional well-being. I think this is something that everybody will need to know and understand so that, you know, we will live from this place to know what are those things that can affect our emotional well-being, and then we'll now begin to safeguard them. Over to you, Dr. Charles Umel.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kemi, for bringing me on. And the same day, everybody on the set. I appreciate this moment and the work you do in Yaba Voice. And the topic for today is very germane, considering the situation we find ourselves today in the country. And a lot of people must find a way of surviving. And also, Dr. Moto Jesse, thank you very much for that beautiful introduction of the subject matter. We just chip in a little there. And before I start with the factors, when Dr. Bodukwe was talking, you could see that it was obvious that you can't talk about mental health without emotional well-being. So they go pari passu. And as a result, the focus there is how we can successfully handle life stresses and adapt to changes and difficult times. Okay, and these changes could be positive. When it's positive, people don't know that they can also adapt to it because it might cause certain level of what? Distress, if not properly managed. But when we talk about distress, our mind goes to only the negatives. Okay, so that's a beautiful one and a beautiful intro. Now, zooming down to the factors that can affect our emotional well-being. Remember, we are in this biopsychosocial model era now. We always look at every situation from the biological, from the psychological, and from the social perspective. And that is when we'll talk about mental health. And it's a multidisciplinary area. And looking at it from that perspective, one of the factors we must pay attention to in terms of maintaining a very good emotional well-being is the physical factor. A lot of us tend to ignore it. I don't know if I've seen somebody that came down with one form of illness or the other. What is the person's state of mental well-being? You know, we take it for granted. And that's why so many issues arising from our physical health, we only think it is for physical intervention. They also affect our emotional well-being. We also have genetic predisposition to this. I don't know if you have seen somebody with HBSS and the situations they go through, it affects their mental well-being. And some other persons with genetic aberrations. Now, have you talked about diet? How do you think your diet can influence your well-being? I could remember when we were at school, some people were doing 001. Can you imagine yourself doing 001? That simply means no breakfast, no lunch, you only have dinner. You're going to be a very aggressive and irritable person all day. That has the tendency of affecting your well-being. Now, what about your sleep? Some people say they don't sleep up to 4 hours a day. And you know the negative impact of sleep deprivation. And we have normal ranges of sleep. Okay, and usually for adults, if you can get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, it's good for you. But you can hardly see adults doing that these days due to a lot of physical factors. Okay, and this can impact negatively on the emotional well-being. Then another factor there is age. People don't know the importance of age. As you grow older, responsibilities change. The body also changes. And so many factors begin to affect your emotional well-being. I don't have to go too deep into that. I will use Erickson's theories of psychosocial development so that you see some of the impacts of age on our emotional well-being. Now, let me quickly jump down to the psychological factors. The psychological factors can come in form of our personality characteristics. What do I mean by that? Some people, by nature of their personality characteristics, are already predisposed to emotional difficulties. We say some people are always on the move. The one they say type A personality characteristics. Now, currently, we define them as people who are extroverted but emotionally unstable. They're always on the move now. They are very impulsive and very, very excitable. And all these things and the drive to achieve predisposing them to becoming very, very recalcitrant in their emotional expression. So this is a factor we also have to look at. Now, another factor is the state of your mental well-being. Some people are already diagnosed with one form of mental health disorder or another. That on its own has predisposed them to emotional unwellness. And they need to be taken proper care of. Now, some people, in order to help themselves get out of more emotional distress, get deeper due to their behavior. What do I mean? Addiction. Today, we have gambling addiction. We have social, what's it called? The one that is currently social media, phone addiction. All these things impact negatively on our emotional well-being. Then is it the one that is very common now, psychoactive substance use? All these are factors that can affect our well-being negatively. Now, let's look at some of the social factors there that could impact negatively on our emotional well-being. One of them is the kind of relationship we have at work, among our peers. Some relationships are very toxic. And when you have such toxic relationship, it predisposes you to emotional unwellness. Now, what about family? The dysfunction in the family is becoming something else. And can you imagine fighting with your wife and getting to the office? What is the emotional state going to look like? And you know, we have families where women, the wife and the husband, stay in different rooms. They don't talk. And they live together. So how emotionally stable will such a person be? Now, some cultural practices can also expose people to emotional unwellness. And then the kind of work we do. Then coming down to financial situation, money. How buoyant you are financially is another factor. And then how able you are able to accommodate yourself. A lot of us live in a room and with 5 or 6 children. I think, in fact, there are so many factors. If I keep going on, Kemi is beginning to fall asleep. Let me wake her up. Take over from me there.
No, Dr. Charles, I can never sleep. You know, what was going through my mind is, excuse me, if you look at all of these factors, and who else now is going to be well at the end of the day? Because it's so germane. Yeah. And you know, when you were talking about sleep, something just crossed my mind. And that was the fact that in the midst of all that we have to deal with, how can somebody even sleep adequately? Because I'm thinking of what will the children eat tomorrow? How are we going to move and navigate? So how will sleep be adequate? You know, there's a ripple effect from the social to the, you know, to the financial, to the psychological, and also even to the physical. And that's a lot that most individuals have to deal with. Because when you look at the realities of all that is happening around us, people can't sleep effectively. There's anxiety, there's worry, and so many other things that it's affecting. But Dr. Motudesi will be talking to us briefly now on some of the signs, how do you know that when you're looking at your emotional well-being, there is a problem there? Because we need to understand this so that we can begin to take adequate steps to either treat ourselves or to prevent it from happening any further. All right, Dr. Botujese, over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you once again. All right. So, in talking about the signs of emotional unwellness or how for emotional well-being, I first of all like to lay a foundation which would help us in our dialogue and expressions of signs of emotional unwellness. One of the first things I want to say is this: before we can have the manifestation or the production of what is going on the of our behavior, which is related to behavior, which we will call behavior. Before we can have a manifestation of behavior, certain things have gone on at the back end, like the technology data guys will talk about. All right. So what has gone on the back end? Is our thoughts? So from what Dr. Charles has told us, he has told us a lot of things, how a lot of things are going on in the family, going on in the society. And you see, all these things will impact on your thoughts. All right. And so there are generation of different thoughts within yourself. These thoughts will impact our moods and then eventual expression of the behaviors that we will show forth eventually. So how is this related to signs of emotional wellness? If you remember, when I talked about definition of emotions earlier, I highlighted a lot of emotions. So how do you know that we are emotionally unwell? Any one of us can display a form of emotional unwellness at any point in time. It all depends on how overwhelming the internal or external events are, leading to the production of our thought, impact on our moods, and the outcome of our behavior. So one of the things we usually would be expressing would be things like irritability. All right. It creeps in quite early. So imagine a person who is short on sleep. All right. It gets 3 hours of sleep every night. The body is trying to recover physiologically the next day. It gets to work and is met with one problem or the other. Is met with issues, or maybe he comes into the office and the office is unclean. He just starts snapping. Where is the cleaner? Where is it? Where is that? A lot of irritability. Okay. Anger, a display of anger, sadness, overwhelming feelings of sadness. And I want to say that these things occur in gradation. They don't just occur all at once. Are we allowed to feel sad? Are we allowed to be angry? Are we allowed to be irritable? Definitely, yes. They are healthy responses. But when it begins to increase in magnitude, increase in frequency, okay, then we need to go sit back and look for the root cause in order to be able to address them. So going further in terms of signs of emotional unwellness, we have features of not wanting to be in the midst of people. You withdraw, a lot of confusion, you become a ball of confusion, anxiety, undue fear, panic, and all that. Okay, so these are immediate signs that we would feel. And as these signs continue to grow without being checked, as they continue to grow without being checked, they begin to impact on our behaviors. What do we begin to see? We begin to see a lot of paranoia, violence. So I would give this example because when we talk about paranoia, we talk about violence, we may begin, a lot of people will be saying, I'm not mentally unhealthy, I don't have a mental health disorder. How can you talk about violence to me? I know. But I will give this example in everyday Nigerian situation now. So you have a budget of maybe 10,000 naira to go to the market, all right, to buy things for the household. You have planned that your children are going to feed for 5 days on this amount and all that. And you get to the market and the seller is telling you that the thing you bought for maybe 1,500 last week is going to take half of your budget now, 5,000 naira. And you just realize that people are just complaining, my salary did not increase, and you just keep nagging and nagging. And if you are not careful, you put the brunt of the anger on the seller, all right? And you realize that you don't have a mental health disorder. No, you don't, right? You don't have a sickness. No, you don't have. But you have had the situation, all right, the situation has impacted on your thoughts, has impacted on your mood, and is giving you an outcome of a behavior that sometimes some people say that, but that's normal. I can never do that. I can never get to the market and be angry at somebody. I can never do that. We all say things like that, but emotional unwellness, these are help us to see that, oh, I need to go back to check. I need to go back to see, okay, let me go back and check. There's something that's gone wrong. Where should it be corrected? So I've effectively highlighted certain things that can indicate to us that we have a form of emotional unwell-being. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Dr. Omotodesi. I'm still coming back home because the day I took 10,000 naira to the market and I wanted to buy a lot of fish, and I ended up buying only pepper. So what explanation am I going to give to the mouth that is waiting for me at home? And you are saying, I don't know how we'll balance it. And we will come back, we will come back, we will come. Okay, but Dr. Ume, please note that you can drop your questions and your comments on the chat box so that we can be able to, this special speaker will be able to address them before we end the conversation today. Now let's look at the adaptive coping skills that we can use, the coping skills that we can use now to improve our emotional well-being. I know earlier when you were talking about addiction, so we know that those ones are in. But what are the coping skills that we can use that can help us to be able to improve our emotional well-being so that it doesn't lead up to whatever problems that we can get at the end of the day? Over to you, Dr. Ume.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Now, I'm going to look at it from two perspectives. The first one is self-help coping skills. The other aspect is the professional help you can seek when you discover that something is wrong. Now, if you pay attention to what Dr. Modukola was saying, you could see that we're not looking at a diagnostic criteria for you to say you have this, okay? So, but a lot of people think that they can only seek help only when they have met any diagnostic criteria. No. Now let's take it back to her definition, linking it to what? Like how we deal with our stressors. And if you look at it, stress is normal. And all of us need stress to survive. But what is not normal is sustaining this stress level to the point that it becomes a distress. When it becomes a distress, it's going to affect your general functioning, okay? And that is when you know you need help. And what are the kind of help you should look out for? Like I said earlier, let's start from the self-help category. Remember when I was talking about the factors, I talked about physical factors. And when you start noticing some niggling feelings, the best approach is to seek out a medical doctor for full evaluation so that if something is brewing, it can be nicked in the bud because it becomes debilitating. But in this part of the world, a lot of us don't do that. We have to wait until we are down with the illness, we're incapacitated before we start seeking. How many of us have private personal physicians that we reach out to? In doing that, you are preventing a bigger thing from happening, and that is a coping mechanism. And nobody will teach you that other than yourself. Now, let me quickly move down to the next one, which I might consider building resilience. Remember, you're going to live with stress forever, but you need to build resilience to deal with it. Suzanne Kowalski did a study that he identified 3 characteristics of stress-hardened personality. What was he trying to tell us? That different persons might be exposed to the same situation. Why one person comes down with distress, another person is what? Coping very well. So she did our study and came up with those characteristics that will make people survive even in the face of difficulty. What are these characteristics? One of them, he called what? What's it called? Sorry, let me pick it the way she put it. Now, looking at problem from the personal perspective that will predispose you to looking at your ability to deal with that problem. She used a high sounding word, so that's what I didn't want to go there. I want to break it down so that we begin to understand it from that perspective. Now, what is it trying to say? Break down your problems into components and then look at your capacity to deal with them. Now, instead of externalizing or attributing it to other forces, first, have you looked at it based on what you can do? Now, the next one is looking at the problem as a challenge, not really a problem. If you see it from the challenge perspective, that means you are looking for ways to overcome that challenge. And the last one is how you exert control over all these situations. Now, if you have a journey of 1,000 miles and you are not conceptualizing of the first step, and you are looking at it from that 1,000 miles, that 1,000 miles will overwhelm you. But if you say, if I take one step, that 1,000 miles reduces by what? A step. And that is because that is the ability you have to deal with the situation. So now build your resilience by developing healthy physical habits. Exercises have been implicated or indicated as one of the ways to reduce your distress. Now, you're not just exercises per se, regulated exercises. If you check WHO, it says minimum of 30 minutes, 3 times a week or so of physical exercise will go a long way in helping you. Now, another one is this, recreation and taking a break. Now, in this part of the world, I don't think we have recreation. If you check our regular schedule as workers, we have leave period. In Nigeria, nobody observes that leave period. What we'll do is we'll leave one job and take up another one. Then when we get back to the office, we are worse than when we left. And it goes on year in, year out. Do we really know the importance of taking a break, having a recreation, and what it does to the system? Like, I was talking with one of my colleagues in state, because I was asking him, why is it that whenever you people are not in the office, it's only the answering machine that will, when you call, you'll be picking. But in Nigeria, it's a lie. You can't do that because the person is always on the move. Let go and recoup so that when he comes back, by not even recouping, you're not any more than you should earn. Those little things you think you are doing that is destroying your body, it's not making you any richer. It's just that we are not managing our time properly. And if you discover the importance of having a break, yes, you can take a trip to the Bahamas and dance Yahula wearing a grass skirt. By the time you come back, you look very fresh. And your productivity will also improve. Then another factor there is social support. We neglect it a lot. If you remember that human beings are social animals, why are we social animals? We are social animals in the sense that we depend on one another in order to meet our everyday needs. But some of us think that we are soloists. Everything you want to do it by yourself, you are going to be overwhelmed. Social support goes a long way in taking away your distress level. Now, what about emotional intelligence? Yeah, people are saying mindfulness, this, that. Yeah, it focuses on what? Emotional intelligence. When you are under stress, what can you do? Do you break a bank? Do you break old thriving relationships simply because you're under pressure? You're going to be under pressure all the time. But learn how to understand the situation for what it is. Now understand what other people are going through, and then place yourself in a comfort zone where you are not going to distress yourself from any disturbances. Okay, then let's look at the professional perspective. By the time you discover that you cannot help yourself, seek help. We have different mental health experts. And some people will say, what about you people that are mental health experts? Who do you go to when you're in distress? Yes, we debrief. You can't go on like that, carrying people's burden. So you have to start by knowing the importance of seeking out. Why do we say you seek out mental health professionals? You can't go to your friend because he's not professionally trained to handle your information. Your friend might, when you quarrel tomorrow, might use your close information against you. And you might not like that experience. And that's why we advise that you go to mental health experts. We have the clinical psychologists there. We have the psychiatrists. We have the social workers. All these people have their limits. When you meet them, they will look at your situation and say, okay, this is not my area. I'm going to refer you to this person who has better skills to deal with your condition. Now, when you come to a clinical psychologist with some of these mental health issues that have not met any diagnostic criteria, the first thing is the use of psychotherapy to explore you and to deal with your problem. And one of the techniques we employ more in dealing with everyday life situation and emotional issues is cognitive behavioral therapy. And it was derived from the writings of Epictetus in the 1st century AD. And he wrote in the Corridon that people are disturbed not by things, but by the view of the whole of things. And if you look at it critically, you discover that it's not the problem you have that is the source of your distress. Rather, the interpretation you gave to that problem. Because another person could be in that situation and that person will not be distressed. Thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
All right.
No, yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much. I love the way you ended the conversation, and it's not a problem in itself. There is a problem that's not overwhelming you, but it's your interpretation of the problem, and that's so for me. It's very germane to this conversation because when you interpret wrongly, then every other thing will be wrong. And don't forget what Dr. Motu said earlier about your thought, your mood, and your behavior. There is an intertwine between all of those things. And so one tends to affect the other. Dr. Ume said, take a break. And he said something very funny. He said, sometimes when we even go on leave, people tend to now resume at another working place. Also, that by the time they now come back from leave, they look so worse off than even when they actually left or took the leave. And that's really the truth because people use their leave to, the way the word is, we hustle. We tend to just want to hustle. But it's really distressing for the body a whole lot of time because it has very severe effects on our functioning. And most times it doesn't allow us to be able to function and move on as much as we should move on. Social support, these are things I had spoken about. And he said something, even for professionals. Now, I tell my colleagues, I said, we are not immune. Okay, Samuel. Okay, maybe you should rejoin. We can hear ourselves there. Okay, all right. For professionals, this is about the time when you need to distress them more, debrief, talk, do a whole lot of things that would help you to be able to navigate. Because as long as we are still part of the word system, we're also taking on quite a whole lot of burdens in terms of meeting people's needs and other things, and that could also be detrimental to our functioning a whole lot of time. There's a question about Dr. Motujesi. I wanted to take that question about the child who is a sanguine or who is also very stubborn or very aggressive. What can they do? How can they help this particular child? Dr. Motujesi, please, can you take that question for us?
All right. Thank you for this question. All right. So the question says that how do we connect temperament to mental wellness first? Example is a sanguine child. All right, so quite an interesting question. One of the things I want to first of all say is this. Having ruled out the presence of any mental health disorder in the child, having ruled out, okay, the child has been taken for an assessment to be certain that just as there is no underlying disorder, all right, then what it means is that we have a child that is developing normally on our hands. So, and the child is sanguine, the child is naturally, well, I wouldn't say naturally aggressive. What should be done is that it is the guidance or the words or the professionals that are involved in the daily training of the child that should use the right interventions. All right. Everybody can display any unruly behavior at any point in time, okay? But it is the interventions that we use, all right, that can help guide a person, all right? So a child can be aggressive, okay, he needs a toy, all right? He wants it now. He wants to watch TV now. And if he doesn't watch, he's going to throw balls at anybody, is going to do anything. Well, a child cannot be, anyone cannot be allowed to continue in that display of behavior. A person has to be re-regulated, to be shown that, okay, you want this, you can have delayed gratification, all right? These are techniques that have to be taught. These are things that need to be taught. You can wait for a particular time before this is gotten. This is not the right time to do so. These are interventions we need to put in place, not by beating up the child, not by throwing things around, not by degrading the child with words, but by putting in the right interventions at every point in time. The question says that, the first part of the question says, how do we connect temperament to mental unwellness? Every one of us are a mass of emotions. And that is what I said at the beginning. We all have a fundamental physiological right to display emotions, whether to internal or to external events, okay? And these will influence our temperament. So it all depends on what our responses are that we would result in saying that, oh, this person has is very hot-tempered, this person is mild-mannered, and all. However, with the right regulations and interventions, a person can be trained, all right, to be what it, and these are the skills that professionals are taught, psychologists, mental health experts, psychiatrists that know. However, for every individual who is involved in the grooming of anyone, children, adolescents, we must know the right interventions to put in place as long as there is the absence of a diagnosed mental health disorder. If there is a mental health disorder, then the appropriate treatment modalities would be put in place. However, we all need to know the right interventions to put in place in order to be able to train on how a person should fit into a proper display of behavior. Okay, if all of us had been left to our vices from childhood, I'm sure the entire society will be a total myriad of problems today. Thank you.
That's just beautiful. No, very, very, very beautiful. Thank you so very much, Dr. Moto Jesse. That's very beautiful. And no, I love the fact that all right. So having a bit of technical each year, we're trying to work it out. So thank you, Dr. Moto Jesse. We know that if everyone is left alone, you will find out that the whole place would not even be able to. It's going to be like an animal zoo rather than a human place where people can live because of the different behavior, display of emotions. And so what Dr. Moto Jesse has told us is it must be regulated. And with proper training, what behavior modification methods and other things, we will be able to help a child to be able to maintain proper decorum and be able to function as adequately as possible. Now, the second question that was raised has to do with what is happening in the economy currently and how it's affecting people's mental health and mental functioning. Dr. Charles Ume, I want you to quickly attend to that. How can people cope? How can they function in the midst of all that they have to deal with, that they have to cope with at the moment? Over to you, Dr. Charles Ume.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Now, sorry, permit me to just add a voice to the earlier question. Now, classifying a child as a sanguine child is labeling that child. It's important we don't label children, rather describe their characteristics. And if you describe their characteristics, then it can give you opportunity to handle the aspect you want to correct, because you're not going to carry all of them at the same time. And if you remember, with children, behavioral therapy seems to be the best approach. And one of the principles of behavioral therapy is break down those behaviors into various components and handle them one at a time to achieve the desired result. That is just an addendum to Dr. Modukola's interesting contribution there. Now, let me go back to the question you asked. In a financially difficult time, how do we cope? Coping begins with what? Identifying what the problems are. Because if you are earning 1,000 naira, you're not going to have the same problem with somebody who is earning 50,000 naira. Because with your 1,000 naira, all things being equal, you've been surviving. So don't think that someone who is earning 50 is better off than you are. Because we are, like in current situation, we don't have rich person in Nigeria anymore. The bigger you are, the bigger your problem. That is where it is now. So the next thing now, how do I deal with this situation? Now, first, go back to the basics. And the basics simply means, what can I afford and what can I not what? Afford. And that goes back to the principle of interpretation. When you're able to know what you can afford, then don't tell me because you are living in one apartment since 20 years ago. Now you want to jump up to 2 apartments. Meanwhile, your resources cannot what? Carry it. Now break it down to what you can afford. If you are eating 2 pieces of meat before, now, because the money has gone down, the values, you can afford to eat what? 1, so long as there is meat in your food. Even if it's not a big lump, you can even cut it in bits so that you have the psychological satisfaction that there is meat in your food. That is problem solving. Okay? So identify the problem, then break it down into bits and ask yourself, which and which can I deal with now? And which are the priorities? Remember, if you go to the principle of economics, our wants can never finish you and you can never satisfy it. So what you need to do is identify the basic, meet it the best you can. Then these other ones, it's not that you don't know they are there. Take them to the cooler, put them in the cooler, lock it up. Depending when the resources are there, so that they don't keep cropping into your mind. Because if you allow them to keep cropping into your mind as a problem, they are going to affect your other functioning. The other way you could have been more functional will also be affected by things you cannot even help. So my first advice there is know what you can do based on your interpretation of your problem. Remember when I say interpretation of problem, I'm not saying interpretation of another person's problem. Your own. Leave the other person, because that person's problem is his or her own what? Problem. He knows how he deals with them. Identify your own problem. Now you evaluate your resources, starting with what can I possibly do? And what can I not possibly do under this kind of condition? Now, remember what COVID era did to us. Because a lot of us workers think that we can always go to the office without doing anything. Now we started working what? from home, and we are making the same impact. That is another thing that this kind of situation is throwing up on us. What are those other skills you have that you have never put into practice? Can there any other sources of living? Why is it that you are not beginning to put them into practice? That tells us about time management. I've seen some people that tell me that, oh, I do this, I don't have time. Please, you have time for everything. The only thing you are lacking is the motivation and the focus to drive. State what you want to do, break them down. Then you can see that you have time to do everything you want to do, including these exercises we'll talk about. Some people will tell you they wake up 5 a.m. They don't have time to do exercises. They don't have, it's a lie. You can do exercises in your bedroom. It's not that you don't have the mindset, you don't have the focus. You can achieve it. Difficult times or no difficult times, okay? And the another thing is the belief system. Some people have developed some mantras that guide what they do. And in such mantra, they say, oh, I'm a tough guy. When the going gets tough, the tough what? Gets going. Now, can you see, you're not, with such mantra, you're not seeing anything as a problem. You are seeing it what? As a challenge. And you already have made up your mind to overcome that what? Challenge. That is the way we roll. Okay? But if you give up, things are difficult. I hope you know that in this time that we're saying things are difficult, some other person are saying this is the best time in Nigeria for them. And we are all living the same Nigeria. So the problem is not with the externals. The problem is with what? Internals. I hope you remember the locus of control. Don't attribute your shortfall to external. Look at it as my problem. Thank you, Kami, before you flog me out of the...
Thank you so very much. I know there's so much to say to help people to navigate this period, but we don't have the time. There is a question that was sent in privately. I'm going to ask Dr. Motujesi to take that, and then she's going to take the last one. So Dr. Ume, please prepare also for your last one. But can the emotional wellness of the child, the well-being of the child be compromised? Dr. Motujesi, please take that with your last one. Take that question with your last one. Over to you.
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity again. First and foremost, I want to say that all we have said so far are not forms of motivational speeches, because some of you may feel that we're talking motivational talks here. These are science-based facts. These are science-based solutions, all right, to everyday scenarios. Okay, so this is not, we're not just pumping you up in any way. Okay, so the very first thing, the question she has asked is that can a child's emotional wellness be compromised? Oh yes, anybody's emotional wellness can be compromised, whether by internal or external factors, okay, as like what we have said so far, okay. But I want to say this before I break down this question, is that any behavior or any sign displayed by a child is an opportunity to teach an appropriate behavior. So never lose a teaching moment, okay, in a child's display of behaviors. Okay, so what can compromise a child's emotional wellness? What we consume. What is the child feeding on the outside? What is he watching? Okay, so we've had instances whereby people have said that when children are acting like cartoons. I once read an article where the person said the child is always in front. After a while, they just realized that the child was walking like the cartoon, talking like the cartoon, doing things like the cartoon. All right. So that happens to be because of poor screen regulation, okay, on the parts of the guidance or the adults around the child. Okay, so these are issues and things that can compromise a child's emotional wellness. A child that is in the midst of a lot of violent displays of behavior by adults could display emotional unwellness, okay? The child can be consistently angry because that is what the child has been modeled to display, okay? But when these things occur, there are appropriate interventions to re-regulate the child to the right mode of behavior, if that is a desired goal. Because I know that that is not always a desired goal for everybody. Okay, some people have desired goals that are different from others. Okay, but any child can be rerouted to the desired goal of expression. So in my final words, I would like to say this, that one of the key things in times like this, and as relates to our emotional wellness, is how well we regulate our emotions. Okay, Dr. Charles has said a lot of things about from the internal to the external and all that. Okay, but we must understand that we have a right. You are the person that is responsible for your reactions and your responses to any situations. So you need to sit down and determine, I may be angry now, but I have a right to determine how I express this anger. And like I always tell my colleagues, is that I can give the same instruction, all right, or a feedback to a person who will tell me thank you and say it in another way, and I can be boxed for saying it, but I am still passing the same message across. So we need to learn to regulate our emotions in order to be able to have a good display of behavior. And finally, I want to say that in moments like this, we must remember that in every crisis, there is an opportunity. There is an opportunity. So this is the best time for us to put on our creativity thinking, okay? Put on our creative caps so that we can beat the odds coming from the external environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so very much. That's beautiful regulation, and you are responsible. So don't put another person on the driver's seat. You're the one driving, and so you must be able to regulate as well as possible. Thank you so very much, Dr. Motujese. Dr. Charles, let's take the final word from you.
Okay, before you accuse me of buying time, I'm gonna do it in a jiffy. Now, remember, in life, you have just your own life. But the problem we do have is we don't even know who we are. I want us to begin to use this time to begin to ask ourselves some questions. And probably this question goes to everybody. Who are you and what have you become? If you discover there is a gap between who you are and what you have become, then you're going to be having distress. You bridge that gap. And by the time you bridge that gap, then you now have a focus in life. This focus is like a pathway. If you're not going towards your goal, you discover at any point in time, you retrace. And some of these things come from the interpretation we give to our situation. On a final note, there is no problem out there. The problem is the interpretation you give to the situation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Charles. There is no problem out there. What else you ever see as a problem is the interpretation that you give to it. So once we leave this classroom today, let's begin to change our interpretation, and then you will see that nothing will overwhelm you. We will be able to deal adequately with quite a whole lot of things. Once again, I want to say thank you to everyone who had been on this call with us. We apologize again sincerely. Some people had network issues. Some weren't able to join us. Please, you will be able to watch the recorded version on our YouTube page, Yaba Voice FMPHY, and then you'll be able to watch the recorded version. And it would also help us to share so you can be a vanguard of the mental health, and more people will be able to have access to this knowledge that has been shared today. And there are also past recordings on the YouTube page. Please share, like, comment. We would love to hear from you. It gladdens our heart when we hear feedbacks like this. And if there are peculiar things you are open to hear from us, please reach out. We would oblige you. We want to be able to give the best, and that's what we aim to do. And so on behalf of the medical director and everybody on the Yaba Voice team, I want to say once again, thank you so very much for being on this call with us this afternoon. We will come your way again next month by the grace of God with something very, very unique. And it's going to be for a unique set of people. So watch out for our flyer. And until then, please ensure that you can regulate and then you can also interpret appropriately. And when you do that, you're able to maintain your health awareness. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much, everyone. Please take care of your mental health. Take care of yourself out there. Bye-bye. Thank you so very much, Dr. Charles. Dr. Motigasi, thank you so very much. Bye-bye.